Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the OHM Podcast. Now, this week I'm really excited to be joined by Shaan Arora, and he's the co-founder and CEO at Alia Technologies. Now, these guys are super interesting. So it's a SaaS pop-up alternative that has become really popular in the past few weeks. And its main role is to get new site visitors engaged and interacting. So aside from that, he's a young guy who's made a really big name for himself in the eCom landscape. And I'm excited to kind of have this conversation with him. So Shaan, it's great to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. Well, look, jumping straight into it, can you run me through the background of Alia and just kind of explain what it does and how you guys got started?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Alia is a pop-up tool that helps brands to increase conversions, right? And the method through which we do that is by allowing brands to educate their site visitors and reward their site visitors for being educated, right? And kind of how that looks is, let's say a customer were to learn about a brand, their About Us page, kind of what they do and the unique aspects of them. That customer actually has a higher chance of converting than a customer who doesn't have that kind of education, right? So education leads to higher conversions, and we put that customer education within the pop-up. So that's what we do here at Alia. And the founding story is pretty interesting, actually. I used to be a Shopify dev for my mom. So my mom sold Indian clothes in person, like I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. So in Boston, she would sell these clothes, and then naturally she decided to move online, as kind of every retail store decided to do so at some point. So I was like, okay, let me help you out and become your Shopify dev. At this time, I was about 20 years old, so I was like, okay, let me become your Shopify dev and see kind of what I can do in the online space. And I was trying my best. The sales were not really going for us online. I realized the difference was that she wasn't able to get her message across and tell her story in the online setting as she was able to do in person. And there was no app that created gamification and rewarded customers for being educated. And the education piece was missing in the online world. There was no app that did it, and I have a CS degree and I have a few buddies, and I was like, let's make the app and we can do it ourselves. So that's what we did. Um, super cool that my mom was my first customer. That's something I'm super proud of. Now we work with over 350 e-commerce stores. So yeah, it's just been an awesome journey.
That is a very cool founding story. I don't think I've heard one in the e-com space that's as interesting. I guess my next question is, in terms of, what you said about, using pop-ups to educate, what does that look like in reality, and how is that different from, a standard get 10% off, give us your email address kind of pop-up?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And we care a lot about opt-in rates, right? So we have a full screen pop-up for our brands that crush for opt-in rates. On our website, we say we do 10 to 15% opt-in rates. Oftentimes that number is actually higher for brands, which is super cool. But so we have a full screen pop-up that will always be opt-in first, right? And similar to how most folks opt in, email, SMS, right? And now the cool part about Alia is that we allow brands to give a boosted reward for customers who choose to go through education. So how that looks in actuality and for a lot of our brands is I would input my email and SMS through a full screen pop-up for 10%, right? And say, hey, Shaan, you've got 10%. Do you want to take 30 seconds, learn about us, and get 15%, right? Now, most site visitors choose to go for that 15%. And once they choose to go for that, then they start a 30-second educational journey. And, it's not just like kind of the About Us page where it's you scroll down and read a bunch of stuff. We make it more interactive, we make it more gamified. That's really the crux of it, right? You're going to get great opt-ins, but you'll get the added benefit of having customers go through the educational journey if they choose to. And those that choose to have a higher conversion rate.
Okay. And what does that education journey look like? So I've kind of, put in my email address, I've opted in. What happens next? Is it video? Is it text? Where is it? And how many pieces of information am I given? What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And yeah, so you opt in, right? And then we do all kind of media, right? Image, video, text, GIF, YouTube, Vimeo, whatever it might be. And the site visitor just needs to essentially like look at it, and you can put a time delay on how long a slide, right, an educational piece of content lasts for. By default, it's 4 seconds, right? So the site visitor looks at that slide for 4 seconds and then can move on to the next slide. Our recommendation is to have 3 to 5 slides, whether that be questions you're asking or actual pieces of educational content. That's our recommendation. We've seen if you go above that, sometimes there can be, this idea that folks are kind of getting, less value over time from reading more, right? Like there's that side of it. And we believe the content can be engaging and impactful enough in 3 to 5 slides to lead to higher purchase rates.
Okay. And you mentioned before, obviously opt-in rates are insane, like double digit kind of minimum.
Yeah.
Do you see an impact from kind of educating people on site-wide conversion rates as well?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And we do. And actually for the Shopify president, who's one of probably my favorite brands that we've been working with for over a year now, on his store called Firebelly Tea, we uplifted their conversion rate. I believe the number was, I think it was above 40%, like compared to what they were doing before. Not 40% store-wide, but 40% like increase of what their previous conversion rate was, which is super cool. And we don't promise that we'll increase conversion rates for brands, but it has happened, and it's something that we do a good job of when folks go through the customer education.
Okay, so it's kind of like a secondary byproduct.
Yeah, I'd say the first product is going to be increase opt-in rates and then increase purchase rates after opt-in. And general store-wide conversion, there's a lot of other factors, as you can imagine, that play into it. While the pop-up is a factor, like just a million other things that can kind of contribute to that. So we try to focus on what we can control, and then the other stuff can be secondary after that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. And you mentioned your kind of unique founding story. What was that process like from kind of having the idea to building out an MVP and then starting to scale up?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And yeah, I started my company while I was in college, actually, so it's very very young story. Came up with the idea actually, and then it's kind of interesting story. So essentially, like I had a girlfriend while I was in college, right? For 2.5 years. Like right when I got to college, right? Like the first week I met her, started dating, everything, all that. Then I moved to New York City for 6 months with one of my current co-founders named Corey, and she moved to Barcelona, right? So we split up, and now I'm in New York City after having a girlfriend for 2 years, single, and I'm just like, wow, like I need to become great. Like I have a lot of motivation to become a great man, and with that motivation, I thought, let me try to solve the issue that I know my mom has, and let me try to solve it in a massive way. So that was kind of the founding story was that, and the catalyst and motivation was going through a breakup, which I think is sometimes the best catalyst for every great startup.
Yeah, I think it's a common cause factor.
Yeah. I think so, right? And then me and my co-founder moved to New York City. We worked on the startup every day after it works. Every single day after work, we work on the startup. Then we came back to school. We took on our now CTO, who at that time was just another student, and he helped us build the entire product. He did all the engineering. I have a CS degree, but I'm not the best engineering, and he is fantastic at it. He's one of the best I know. So he built out the entire product. We submitted for the Shopify App Store. They gave us approval. We launched with 3 brands, one of them being my mom. So 2 other brands, 3 brands total, making a whopping total of $30 a month. And at that time, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go full time on $30 a month in the company, because I was like, if I go full time, I think that I have enough conviction that we'll make it work. And someone needs to take a leap of faith. And I was like, I'm delusional enough to do so. So I'll take a leap of faith here for the team. And yeah. And then, we just started growing, and yeah. And our product has always solved a big issue, even from day one. Like, I mean, brands love customer education, and there's no way to really do it on site. So brands were willing to start with us early and pay us. And I was just like, we just need more distribution awareness. And I was like, I think I can do a good job of doing that if I focus on it 24/7.
Okay. So over time, did you start to kind of define roles in that founding 3?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, it's kind of always been the same, right? I think myself as CEO, I've always been focused on sales, marketing, and distribution. Whereas Corey, who you've met, has always been focused on customer success, just because he's really great at being patient. He loves the feeling of bringing a customer who's been onboarded to have great opt-in rates and then increase their opt-in rates over time. Like he loves that. Where I honestly love sales and marketing. I love distribution. I think it's super cool, and I think it's I think it's a really interesting problem to solve. And our CTO does all of engineering, and he loves it too. So like we were just like, hey, like what do you love to do? And if you love to do that, then you should do that all the time because you'll be the most impactful. It'll drive the most revenue for our business, and you'll be the happiest. So that's how we think about our roles, and I think we're all super happy in kind of what we do, which is I think kind of unique in a startup, but it's awesome.
So one thing I do notice is that not many SaaS businesses have a CS person as part of that founding team. And I also noticed this when we've onboarded brands with you is like you actually get responses and you're actually there trying to kind of improve that customer journey rather than like you're really focused on trying to sign someone and then you just kind of like hand it off and it falls between the cracks.
Cool. Nice.
So it's definitely an interesting view looking at you guys. And I guess
Nice.
my question is for the the founder and yourself and Corey, did you guys both start off in product and then kind of splinter out into the other roles, or did you kind of focus on them from the jump?
That's a good question. I think in the beginning we always focused on product. First, like before we even launched the company, it was always thinking about what should our product look like, how does it make the most sense, and let's talk to customers to see what they want us to build, right? And then it was time to start getting customers. So Corey and I were focused on getting customers and did a lot of cold email to start, which I still think is a good channel. Like I think a lot of people think it's like kind of drained out, like fully drained, but in my opinion, like I think there's a lot of value. And I'm like not sure if you guys tried it on the agency side, but I think it's interesting, and especially for young founders. Like if I were to do it again, I would do it the same way. We used our college email, right? So we used our college email, and we were like, "Hey, I'm in college. Like, I have I have this app. Do you want to hop on a call?" And people were down, right? They were like, "Oh yeah, like I'll help you out." And then we would turn that call into a sales call.
Yeah.
And they might be a little bit startled, but at the end of the day, like it was cool because we actually were solving a problem. So they were like, "All right, like you've kind of tricked me here into getting on a call with you, but your product's actually pretty cool. So let's start a trial."
Yeah. No, it's one way to get out of spam, right? To use a university email address.
Yeah, because their delivery is pretty high. So, but yeah, I guess to your question, yeah. So we were focused on product in the beginning, and then we had to focus on distribution. And now that we have a good customer base, we're kind of reverting both back to focusing on product a lot because we know that if the product is good and distribution is there, it'll sell itself.
And as you've scaled, have you kept kind of cold email as the main lead gen channel, or have you maybe used content or kind of referrals or other?
Yeah, it's a good question. Cold email was great for us in the beginning. Because cold email, what we could do is we could say, hey, we have 8 clients, 8 brands. Do you want to be the 9th? And do you want to be the 10th? Do you want to be the 20th? So that's how we got our first, I'd say, 25 brands. Then, brands start talking to one another and kind of word of mouth started picking up, which is pretty cool. And then I decided to challenge myself to post on LinkedIn once a day, every day this year. And that kind of brought us, I think, into the e-commerce world, which was super cool. And now, as you kind of go to events, you meet folks, people just know your name, and the word of mouth starts to spread organically. So I'd say most of our downloads are now from word of mouth, which is super cool. And a lot of it's also from agency partners who have folks on Amped or have folks on other tools, and they just want to increase opt-ins because for the agency owners, like the more emails you can get on your side, the better it is. So it's just a super easy and synergistic partnership with agency people that's been super awesome for us.
Okay. And are there certain channels you want to focus on more going forward?
I think I want to focus on agency partners going forward. I really like working with them, and I think that it just makes a lot of sense on both sides. And we kind of speak the same language as well, which is like, and it just makes everything super easy, and the communication is great on Slack and stuff like this, right? Like you and I can hop on a call and not even like just talk about, what I do or what you do. Like we can just like exchange notes, like, hey, what's working for you? Like, what are you seeing in the space? And to me, that's just like so impactful and valuable.
And on that note, yeah, what do you think about this Q4 for ecom?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think on the email side, what I've been seeing online is like send more emails, and I think it is. I think it is true, honestly. And I think the idea of expanding Black Friday into it starts in maybe end of October, early November. Like they start with a VIP sale and they go throughout the rest of the year. I think it's I think that makes sense. I'd say one other part of Black Friday that I think brands shouldn't ignore is they should still try to collect emails and SMS. Um,
Mhm.
a lot of brands during Black Friday are like, let's make the process as zero friction as possible. And while I agree, you don't want somebody coming, making a purchase, and you like have no contact with them and they haven't opted in, and you're just like, you don't have them in your database. So I'd say still run a pop up because you can announce your site wide sale through the pop up, and a lot of brands are doing that with Alia. So they'll be like 50% site wide sale. Enter email and SMS to get this discount. Now, whether or not they do that, they're still going to get the discount, but it's announcing the site wide sale through the pop up will actually help you to get good opt ins. And won't really reduce friction because that's such a massive discount that people are like, okay, yeah, I'm down to do it for 50% off. So I'd say brands shouldn't be afraid to keep the pop up on and just announce the site wide sale on the pop up.
So do you recommend changing some of the education maybe to instead of being about the brand to being about, why are we running this sale? What is it? And explaining the offer of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of brands are thinking of doing something like that for customer education, which is super cool. Some brands are even just removing the education as well, and I'm not even saying don't do that. Like I think it's okay if brands want to just have it be email, SMS done. I think that's fine. So our recommendation is announce site-wide sale through the pop-up. Customer education. If you're a brand that has a high AOV, keep the customer education. If your AOV is like pretty low, think about removing the education and just having a site-wide sale through Alia.
Okay. And will you guys be collecting data on this across maybe like benchmarking it across your brands and showing, video performs better, this type of content, for Black Friday was the best. So that
Oh,
going forward, brands have like a baseline to compare against.
yeah, it's a good question. This is yeah, and that's something that we were really looking to do better is create templates and create recommendations based off of what we know works best. And that's our major focus for this winter. Is that I'm also saying that, like that's why we're hiring a new engineer is to increase product like recommendations, product templates, so that when a brand comes on board, they know exactly what's going to be the highest performing for them with the data we have on our side.
And can you just actually walk us through that onboarding process? So let's say there's a brand, they want to come and work with you, put in their credit card details. What happens next, and how do we go live with the Alia
Yeah,
site?
for right now, how we're doing it, it's pretty led by our team actually. So if a brand wants to come work with us, they would sign up just through our app. They would just download our app, and then we would either async or get them on a call, understand what they want to do, and then we build everything out for them, and then they can make edits. So they'd be like, "Hey, Corey," you hop on a call with Corey, be like, "Hey, Corey, I want this kind of pop up, and I want this kind of education. Can you build it out?" Corey will build it out. He'll be like, "It's done. Do you want to make any edits, changes, whatever you want to do?" Um, and once the brand does that, then we go live. We say when someone installs the app, we will get them live in less than 5 days. If communication is there, right? And if they're
Yeah.
responding, all that good stuff. But we can get brands live in less than 5 days after installation.
Okay, so they're literally giving you the assets, giving you the instructions, and you guys are doing all the heavy lifting at the back end.
Yeah, like even a lot of times brands won't even give us the assets or the instructions. They'll just be like, "Hey, Shaan, I saw Alia on, let's say like they saw us on like we just started working with Obvi, so maybe they saw us on Obvi. Hey, Shaan, saw Alia on Obvi. Can you just set it up for me?" And yes, we can. And then we set it up. Is this good? Yes, live. So it can be super low touch point, super low friction, which is awesome.
And then just kind of touching on the ecom world as a whole then. So I know you said you kind of worked with your family store. What was your knowledge of ecom going into this product, and kind of how clued up were you about the kind of ecom industry as a whole?
Honestly, it's a good question, and I'll be transparent that we were not very clued up on the world, which I think was a blessing. Right, our thought process when building the company is we are a blank canvas. When we speak to people, draw whatever you would like onto us and make us what you want. Right, and when you have that kind of mindset, when you're ready to learn, ready to iterate, and want your brands and agency partners to tell you what to build, like that is so cool. And that's the benefit of working with Alia, and I think that's why we find a lot of early success is because we are very welcoming to advice. We're welcome to iteration because we know that we were not the experts in e-commerce when we started the company, but we knew there's a bunch of experts in e-commerce, and we want them to tell us what is going to work. Have brands would work with us and be like, I want to use your product, so I will tell you what to build. And that was really cool. And now obviously we're a bit more advanced. We have ideas that we know will work based off of our experiences. But in the beginning we were a blank canvas and we said, we know nothing, you tell us everything, and we will ensure we're building it in a sustainable way.
Okay. And I think that's quite refreshing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then just sticking with the kind of personal kind of side of things, obviously you're very young. How have you found this kind of journey that you've been on the past couple of years?
Yeah, it's honestly been amazing, and I feel super blessed that I could do this every day. And I honestly love e-commerce. Like, I think it's like such a young industry. Number one, which I think is super cool, and number two, I think it's a really experimental industry. Let's say you go into banking, health tech, grocers, right? Like, it's hard to sell software to those folks, and it's hard to convince them that something new is better. Whereas a lot of their ideas are kind of more like, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years and it's working. I'm not touching anything. And in e-commerce, like, we signed the Shopify president within our first 20 brands, and we didn't even have really a great product at that point. And he was down to try it. So like, I think that to me is a cool sign that like brands are willing to try something out if they see the value. And that's why I love e-commerce, because they're not going to discriminate on you based off of age, experience. They're going to discriminate you based off of how your product is, and that's what I think. That's what I think really matters. And obviously, if you have a good network, they might want to use you more and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, if you have a good product, they'll use it, and that's not true of other industries, in my opinion. And that's why I really like ecom.
Okay. Are there certain things you found difficult about working in the ecom industry, or this kind of experience as a whole?
Like I'd say the difficult part, honestly, about e-commerce is there's a lot of about e-commerce SaaS is there's a lot of ways to distribute the software, right? Like agency partnerships, content, app store ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, cold outbound, right? Like paying for interviews. Like there's probably 20 ways. As a software in the e-com, you pay for newsletters, you can pay influencers. There's so many ways that you can distribute your software. Like, which are the most impactful? So I think settling down on 3 or 4 and becoming amazing at those is really important. But I think that's the difficult part, is knowing which 3 or 4 or which even 2 work for you and just going full on to those.
Is that a process of trial and error to find those?
Yeah, it just has to be, because I'm talking to folks who say content is great. They told me that LinkedIn ads are great. They've told me, agency partners are great. And I'm just like, okay, like what works for us? And for us, agency partners and word of mouth are the 2 best. And we're going to focus a lot on both of those and increasing both of those. In the beginning, we tried Shopify App Store ads. We've tried Meta ads. We've tried Google ads. And I'm not saying those don't work, but maybe for our company, this works best.
Yeah. No, and is there anything that you thought would be difficult and has turned out to be easier than you'd expected?
That I thought would be difficult. I thought that honestly, it's kind of just, I thought signing larger brands would be more difficult. Like, I thought the 8-figure and 9-figure brands would have a lot more pushback, but honestly, they have had less pushback than I've thought, and less red tape than I thought. Right? Like we just onboarded a really cool client, SoloWave, and we spoke with their founder and their head of ecom, and we got them a trial started, kicked off like pretty much right away. And I was like, wow, this is like a really, really easy process. I thought for larger brands, it might be a sales cycle of 2 or 3 months, and it really hasn't been. So that's something that I think that has been easier than I thought was going to be, which is super cool.
Okay. Will you offer the bigger brands a trial just to make it a no-brainer?
Yeah, we offer every brand a trial, to be honest.
Okay.
Our trial conversion rate is pretty high, so I'm happy to offer trials because we know that once somebody sees the value, they're happy to pay.
Okay, interesting. And then if you had any advice for people that were in your shoes maybe a couple of years ago, what would you say to them?
If I were to give advice to someone who is younger than me, I would say nobody needs to see your vision yet, and it's okay. Um, right? Like if people believe that you're acting delusional or that you know what you're saying isn't going to happen, that's okay, and you don't need to respond to them. You can just say, okay, no worries, but be delusional and allow folks to say what they want as long as in your heart you have the conviction. You have the conviction that it's going to work. That's the only person that you need to listen to, and that's the only person whose opinion matters. So to have conviction, be delusional, and don't listen too much what other people say.
I like that. I think that's very good advice. In terms of Alia, what's next? What are you guys working on, and how do you see the future?
Yeah, honestly, it's super cool, and I'm really excited for this winter right now because, as I mentioned, we're massive focus on product, and our plan for this winter is to, or over time, is to build Alia into essentially. Let's say you're a brand, you want to use Alia, you would download Alia, you would say into like a maybe like some aspects of AI, but you would just it'd be like a chatbot in Alia that says, "Hey, what do you want?" You can say, "I want a pop up that looks like Obvi and educates customers on our company story." Using software that would just be built out for them. We would use a template. We would scrape their website for content and build out the journey completely automated, zero touch on our side, all done just automated fashion. And then the brand would go ahead and make any edits they would like to that. Um, and we would rely very strongly on our data of what we know works best for a specific industry. Let's say you're an 8-figure health and wellness brand that has influencers as a big channel or like very influencer led brand. Like we have a playbook now that we know, okay, you should have this pop up, you should have this copy, you should have this kind of content, and this is going to be the best formula for you. So like prescribing exact pop-ups to brands based off of our previous data is what I want to do for the future of the company, and build that out such that any brand can come on, get onboarded, go live right away, and actually see better performance than they're seeing now because it's literally based off of previous data.
Okay, so using AI and data to kind of improve the process and benchmark
Yeah,
off some of the
yeah,
businesses.
exactly. So like more low touch and more like we know the kind of brand you are, and this is our database of brands, so we know you should be doing this, and then we just give it to them.
So it's kind of this approach rather than expansion via adding more features and going beyond education or a pop-up, for example.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And honestly, it's an interesting question within our team, but I think for the time being, we're very happy as a pop up. The other pop up people, right? Like whether it be native pop ups through Klaviyo, Sendlane, Attentive, those guys, like they are selling a like a CRM, and the pop up is part of that package. Same with other players in the space like Digio, Privy, all those guys. Like they are selling other stuff. At Alia, we only sell a pop up, and we're not going to cross sell you. We're not going to upsell you. I want you to use our pop up, and I don't care. And that's the only thing I want you to use that we offer, and that's all we offer. So I think there's a lot of value in that position as a company, being the best at one thing and only offering one thing, very heads down, is I think an interesting proposition for us, even as we look to scale.
And do you think a lot of these other SaaS products get lost almost in? Yeah, they start off brilliant at one thing and then they kind of expand and they become average at a bunch of stuff.
Exactly. And it's such a good point. And I think that happens. And it's not even like anyone's fault. It's just like as you grow, you're like, oh, how can I add more features? Like it's natural. But I think if you, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, you go a mile deep and just become extraordinary at one thing, because people will pay for that. So that's what we think. We're going to become the most extraordinary pop-up on the market, and be known as like, these are the pop-up guys. That's what they do. If you want a good pop-up, go to them.
Well, Shaan, look, thank you so much for coming on. I've got a couple more questions just to round things off. The first one being, what size and kind of sector or type of brands do you typically work with? And how can they kind of reach out to you or learn more?
Yeah. Good question. We typically work with brands that do over $1 million a year in revenue. And in terms of sector, there's nothing specific. We work with brands across the board. I would say brands who are looking to increase their opt-in rate are brands we would love to work with. And brands who also have some kind of USP on their products, whether it be, they have their products are more expensive than we can find other places. They have a cool story, they have a cool mission, and their products are just genuinely unique. Those are brands we love to work with. So yeah, I'd say brands are looking to increase opt-in, and or brands that have education components and do over $1 million a year.
Perfect. Okay. And then final question is, do you think there's anyone else that I should have on the podcast?
Yeah, I guess who are you looking to have on? Because I have a lot of friends I can refer to your way. Brands.
Yeah, so kind of brand side, anyone in the SaaS space, but kind of typically ecom focused.
Okay. Dude, I'm gonna have a massive list for you. So let me shoot you over the list after the call. But I can have I'm friends with a lot of other ecom SaaS folks and a lot of brands, and I know so many that would love to hop on here, bro. So let me send you this offline because I have a bunch of names I want to drop you.
Perfect. Well, look, Shaan, thank you for coming on. It was great to hear more about your story. And yeah, I think the final question is, brands should head over to your LinkedIn or your website to learn.
Yeah, you can just go on our website, alialearn.com, and to download us there, or in the Shopify App Store, just type in Alia, ALIA, and we'll come up.
Perfect. And I will put that in the description. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and see you soon.
Awesome. Thank you.